Hey everyone, Lauren again, back to roast some more decaf coffee. So I introduced this coffee before. We are going to roast another EA ethyl acetate or sugarcane process Colombia. Now this is a Colombia coffee that we had in our inventory for just a brief moment, and even though it's not available anymore, I did want to do a roast along and talk about it because I have a slightly different profile goal based on how this coffee was tasting on the sample table, and I also wanted to talk about where we got this coffee from and why we had it in our inventory. So we ended up in a situation a little bit earlier over the summer that a lot of roasters found themselves in, kind of in between coffees, and we had coffees on contract that we were waiting for that just weren't leaving the port. And because of a lot of global sort of shipping issues, this was a really common problem. We ran out of our decaf that we had on hand here. We just needed a little bit to tide us over until our contracted coffee made its way into the roastery. For that, we turned to our friends at Cafe Imports, and they helped us purchase a bag of this EA Colombia from La Bodega. Now, La Bodega is sort of a sister company. It's a subsidiary company of Cafe Imports, and they provide a service to roasters, which is to sell specialty coffee from their warehouse, from the inventory that Cafe Imports manages, in sort of smaller, more manageable sizes. So we're talking about 50-pound bags of coffee that are drop-shipped, flat rate, to customers' homes. You don't have to set up a freight delivery appointment. You don't have to have a business license. You can just buy directly through the website on La Bodega. So we did that to get this Colombia into our facility for just to have something for our toll roasting program, which commonly we roast decaf coffees for those customers, and to have something as like a stopgap solution if someone came to us and needed a 10-pound bag of coffee. It was really the perfect coffee for what we were looking for, something that was fruity and vibrant and a really nice way of showcasing what is so good about the EA processing method, which is that it really highlights origin flavors. You're not tasting any of that processing sort of effect that it's having on the coffee. It's a very gentle, very natural way to decaffeinate coffee. The other thing that's cool about the EA method, and the reason that you're going to see a lot of Colombias that are decaffeinated in this way, is that the EA processing actually takes place at origin. So this coffee is decaffeinated in the same country where it's grown. That means that there are no issues with freshness or with coffees being in transport for a long time, being shipped to a center to be decaffeinated and then shipped to the roaster or importer. That's just like adds a lot of value to the coffee, and I think it comes through in the cup. So to revisit our roast plan, I want to talk about what this coffee was tasting like on the sample roasting table, which is great. I really thought that this coffee was sort of the specialty coffee fans decaf cup. People who like bright, vibrant coffees are going to love this. I got a lot of cherry, sort of cherry juice. I got watermelon rind, which is sort of that, almost that tart part of the watermelon, really, really close to the white part. I found it very refreshing. There was a little bit of a lemony flavor, and that watermelon rind kind of spoke to me of a level of acidity where there were some tropical fruit notes there that were left to be unlocked. I thought the body was really clean. It had very balanced sweetness with a really quick, fresh fruit finish, almost like biting into like a ripe, juicy piece of fruit right at the height of summer. I wanted to maintain all of those flavors with this roast profile, but I hoped to just round out the acidity a little bit, enhance the body slightly. And so the way that I did that was by creating a roast plan that would help me spend a good amount of time in the dry phase, and then a nice slow mid phase with a pretty short amount of time in development, under 20%. I'm looking for 18 or 20% of development. In the roast profile, I tasted flavors of berries. So that cherry note, which is a little tart and a little dry, had become sweeter, a little darker, a little more substantial. I got a little malic acidity, like an apple or a pear, brown sugar sweetness, some fun starchy notes like a plantain, and I still got that fruit punch flavor and a little ripe plum. Again, I think this is a beautiful decaf coffee and a really refreshing, surprising cup. If you're not used to drinking decafs that taste like washed, regular, high elevation, high quality Colombia coffees, this is surprising in a great way. So I'm going to get my roaster down to my drop temperature, which is only around 380. Again, I'm roasting a small quantity here, only 350 grams in my 500 gram roaster. So things are going to go pretty quick and my inputs are going to be pretty low. So let's get started. All right, the hopper's charged. We're coming down to 380, so I'm going to start my countdown on my data logging and begin the roast. Like all of these decaf profiles, we're going in pretty gently. We want to give that coffee enough time to acclimate to a hot roaster. This roaster's been preheating for about half an hour, which is plenty of time for the sample roaster. I'm going in with a soak. That's that initial period where the burners are turned off. And I'm just sort of letting that coffee reach an equilibrium point in the drum, absorb some of that initial heat, let my data logging and my thermocouples kind of take a moment to figure out what's going on. And after 1 minute, I'm going to go in with about 1.3 kPa on my gas pressure. That's out of a total possible 3.8 on this roaster, so it's below 50% gas. Again, we've got a low batch and a delicate coffee that we want to be gentle with, so that's why I'm starting low. All right, 1 minute in, and our burners are at 1.3. My air is at a low setting, low medium setting, which on this machine is about 50 on the dial. And I'm just going to hang out here until I see dry end. Now, like I did with my Mexico decaf, which was a much darker color, I went ahead and grabbed a sample here of the Colombia, so I have a color reference for what the green coffee looks like. This coffee, because it's processed, is a little darker. It's kind of a grayish green, and having this quick sample here is going to let me really have an easier time visually calling dry end or green to yellow, because otherwise it's a little hard to see when this coffee gets pale and when it loses its green color. All right, right on target here. We are hitting green to yellow transition at about 3.5 or 3 minutes and 40 seconds. I'm going to mark that. And I'm not making another adjustment until about 30 seconds when I'm just going to increase my air. I'm letting this gas setting ride until I hear the very first outlier of first crack, and then I'm going to turn it down to 1 kPa. So that's the next landmark we're waiting for. All right, listening now for the first kind of couple outliers. They should be coming up here in 20 to 30 seconds. I have some notes in my roast plan that really help me as I go into a roast of coffee like this, which is just ROR notes for different minute markers, so that even if, there's my outlier, I'm going to drop down to 1 here. That helps me as a newer roaster just kind of feel like I'm still on track and on the right path. When you think about it, a whole roast plan is really just a couple events, and there's a lot of time, several minutes in between those events where it can feel like nothing's really happening, and you start to second guess yourself, and you can kind of start to feel a little worried. Am I on target? Am I not? I mean, of course, I've got my ROR here. I have my roast curve, which I can kind of trust to a certain extent, but this is only the second or third time that I've roasted this coffee. So having those extra notes of those PID temperature landmarks or that ROR in my roast plan just helps me say, okay, you're on track. We've got a really thin thermocouple in this roaster too, so the reactivity and response time, just listen for that rolling first, which I think we're coming up on. There it is. 720 for that first crack mark. And I'm going to bump up my air to sort of my higher setting, which is like 60, 62. So that kind of faster response time means that my ROR might not look exactly like what it looked like on my notes, and I just could be off by a degree or two, and I don't let that worry me. I try not to make big adjustments that really deviate from my plan, because I've tasted this coffee, roasted this way, and I know that it tastes good. The next thing I'm going to do is about 8.5 minutes, which is a minute 10 after the beginning of first crack. I'm going to turn off my fuel, and then I'm just going to kind of coast with that ambient heat left in the drum until my finish temperature, my drop temperature, which is right around 375. All right, so I've done that. Now my burners are off. I've got plenty of heat built up in this drum. We're really ending first crack now. The coffee is really just sort of tumbling. My ROR is dropping. It's right around 12 now. It hit a maximum of about 17 or 18 earlier on. And even though I charged at 380 on the PID, I'm looking for about 374 on my bean temperature probe. So I switched to my data logging probes after I start my roast. All right, and there it is. Awesome. The coffee looks great. It's the color that I want. It's sort of that level of development that I was looking for. And my time spent in phases was exactly right. 41% in the drying phase, and then about 39 in the mid, and about 20% in the development phase. This is going to help me maintain those bright origin flavors, and this coffee is going to taste just like how I wanted it. One tip that I picked up from Bryant when I was asking him about roasting these EA decafs is he reminded me to really trust my plan and my path and not get too worried when the coffees can look a little bit shiny. He said something that happens with the EA processing methods is that it can make the coffee look a little glossy when you drop it in the cooling tray. And the first couple times he roasted an EA decaf, he got worried that he had taken it way too far. Normally we would see glossy or shiny beans when we're getting into second crack and those oils are showing up. So he was really, really nervous until they cupped it out, and he said, oh no, that's just what the coffee looks like. So there's one big takeaway for me that I hope is helpful for you when you're roasting coffees that were developed or processed this way, is don't get concerned if you see that. He kind of called it like a little sweatiness, just like a nice glow, like an after jog glow. And trust your numbers because you know your drop temperature was low enough. We're definitely not into second crack yet. I can't wait to taste this coffee. Hopefully you'll have a coffee that's similar, or this roast plan might make sense for something that you have in your inventory. Follow along for our third and final video. I'm going to roast another EA Colombia, one that is actually in our inventory currently and that you can buy from our website. Until then, check out the roast profile in the captions and let us know what you think. Have a good day.